A forest fire trapped a single mom and her baby. The cowboy who saved them owned half the state. Wyoming Territory, summer of 1884. The ground cracked beneath bare feet, thirsting for rain that would never come. Yellowed grasses rustled dryly under a relentless wind, and the sky above the canyons burned in shades of bronze. For weeks, not a single drop had fallen. The land was waiting, restless, brittle, hungry for flame. Ella May had grown used to the silence. Her cabin sat at the edge of the pine line, a small, hand-built shelter nestled against the shadows of the vast Wyoming forest, 10 miles from the nearest town, 5 miles from any neighbor, and surrounded by nothing but the wild. It was her choice. Silence was safer than people, and isolation was easier than trust. She was 24, a widow, and a mother. Jonah, not yet a year old, had just fallen asleep on her chest. She rocked him in a worn wooden chair by the window, whispering the old lullaby her husband used to sing, her voice cracking on the final note. That was when the thunder began, deep, distant, and dry. Lightning cracked open the sky, silent at first, then a sudden blast like a gunshot. The air shimmered. Ella paused, looking up. The smell hit before the sound did. Smoke. She stood, heart racing. The baby stirred. A second flash of lightning lit the ridgeline above the tree line to the north. Moments later, a faint orange glow bloomed in the distance, small, but growing fast. Ella moved quickly. She soaked a rag in the last of the wash water and pressed it gently over Jonah's face. Her fingers trembled. She threw open the small wooden chest at the foot of her bed, grabbed a blanket, and doused it with what little remained in the basin. The wind screamed through the trees. The fire was coming down the slope like a stampede. She wrapped Jonah tight, held him to her chest, and burst out the cabin door. The world outside had turned red. "Come on," she whispered, more to herself than the baby. Her bare feet thudded against the hard earth as she ran, breath shallow, eyes wide. Sparks danced on the wind like angry fireflies. Trees cracked and groaned as flames leapt from limb to limb. She aimed for the creek to the east. If she could reach it, maybe. But the fire had already cut her off. The smoke was too thick. Ella coughed, staggered, nearly dropped the baby. Her vision swam. She spun around, only to see flames curling around the path she had just taken. The cabin was gone. Just ashes and memory now. A wall of fire blocked every direction. She stumbled toward a single tree, one still wet with sap, tucked low against the earth. She collapsed at its base, pulling the blanket tighter over Jonah. His cries were muffled, but frantic. "I am sorry," she whispered, rocking him. "I am so sorry." The heat pressed against her back. Her lungs burned. She closed her eyes, clutched her baby close, and waited. Then came the thunder of hooves. Not from the storm, but from the earth. Through the smoke, a black horse burst into view, muscles wild and foaming. Upon its back rode a man dressed in ash and sweat, his coat singed at the edges, a wide-brimmed hat pulled low. Rowan Carter. He did not shout. He did not slow. He rode straight through the fire. In one swift movement, he pulled the blanket from his saddlebag, soaked it in his canteen, and wrapped it around Ella and Jonah. She barely had time to gasp before he had scooped them both up with a grunt of effort, lifting them across the saddle. "Hold on to me," he barked. She obeyed, with one hand around her and the other gripping the reins. Rowan turned the horse sharply. The fire roared ahead, a curtain of orange and black. He dug his heels into the stallion's side. "Go." The horse screamed as it charged. They galloped through the blaze. Sparks singed Ella's hair. The smoke tore at her eyes. But Rowan's body shielded them. His shirt caught fire at the shoulder. He did not flinch. The flames opened before them, like the maw of hell. And then, light. Fresh air, night sky, the scent of burned pine fading behind. They had made it through. Ella sobbed into his chest. Jonah whimpered. Rowan said nothing, only held the reins and rode, straight into the darkness. Ella woke to the scent of wild sage and something faintly floral. Her eyes blinked open, and for a moment she thought she had died. The bed beneath her was softer than anything she had ever known, the linens white as snow. Sunlight filtered through gauzy curtains that moved gently in the morning breeze. Then came the sound, faint, breathing. She turned quickly. Jonah lay in a cradle next to the bed, wrapped in a cotton quilt. His tiny hand was bandaged, but he slept soundly, peacefully. A woman in a tan apron sat nearby, dabbing a cool cloth to Ella's forehead. "You're safe now, ma'am," the woman said kindly. "You both are." Ella's heart raced. She pushed herself upright, wincing at the ache in her limbs. Her last memory was fire, roaring, devouring, and a man on a horse breaking through it. Where am I?" she asked. "Carter Ranch," the woman replied. "You've been asleep for 2 days." Ella threw off the covers and sat up. The room swayed, then steadied. Her throat burned. "I need to go. I cannot stay." Before the woman could answer, footsteps echoed in the hall. The door opened. Rowan Carter. He was taller than she remembered, his dark hair damp as if he had just scrubbed away the ash. A faint burn mark curled at the edge of his collarbone, barely visible above his clean white shirt. His eyes found hers, steady, unreadable. "You're awake," he said. Ella opened her mouth, then shut it. The man radiated calm, but there was something about him that made her chest tighten. "You brought us here," she said. "You needed shelter," Rowan replied. He stepped closer, glanced at Jonah, then knelt beside the cradle. His large, calloused hand hovered just above the boy's chest, never touching, just feeling the rise and fall of breath. "How is he?" Ella asked quickly. "He will heal," Rowan said. "The doctor says no lasting harm." Ella exhaled, tension loosening from her spine. "I should leave," she said. "We should not impose." Rowan stood. "You will stay, until the child is well." Ella narrowed her eyes. "You do not know us." He studied her. "You are the woman who ran into fire for her son." "That tells me enough." His tone allowed no argument, and yet it was not harsh. She sat back down. "Why did you help us?" He turned toward the window. "I was not going to let a child die because the sky forgot how to rain." Then he walked out, boots echoing on the floorboards. The woman in the apron returned, quietly offering a cup of tea. Ella took it, dazed. She had not even thanked him. She was not sure she could. She spent the rest of the morning staring out the window. Rolling hills stretched far and golden. Fences ran across the land like stitched seams. Pastures full of grazing horses. In the distance stood a barn bigger than any she had seen in her life. This was not a ranch. It was a kingdom. Rowan Carter, she would later learn, had once been a hired gun in the border wars. Then, like a man punishing himself through ambition, he had bought every piece of dead land no one else wanted and made it bloom. 60,000 acres, no wife, no child, no known kin. The town called him the man who needed no one. And yet, he had carried her through fire. Ella did not understand it. She did not trust it. But, as she looked at her son, safe and warm, she felt something stir. Not gratitude, not yet. Something deeper. Something waiting. Days passed quietly, like dust settling after a storm. Ella had expected awkwardness. Rowan Carter was a man of silence. He did not linger, ask questions, or crowd, but he never disappeared. Each morning, he checked Jonah's bandage himself, hands rough but careful. Each evening, he left a pitcher of boiled water by her door. Not a word, just presence. One afternoon, she found him on the back porch, seated on the wooden steps with Jonah asleep on his chest. The baby's breath rose and fell with Rowan's. His hand patted the boy's back gently, like a silent lullaby. When Ella approached, he did not look up. He would not settle, thought he might like the open air. She nodded, though he could not see her. She stood there a long moment, watching the man who had once walked through fire now cradle her son like something sacred. Later that week, Rowan rode into town without a word. He returned by sunset, dust on his shoulders. Ella expected tools or supplies. Instead, he placed a small wooden horse on Jonah's cradle, hand-carved, with a crooked, painted smile. He left before she could thank him. Ella began noticing things. Her back had been aching from long hours at the stove. The next morning, a rocking stool appeared near the fireplace. The kettle handle had been replaced with one easier to grip. The pantry had been rearranged so she would not need to stretch. He never said a word. Then, one night, as early snow crept over the hills, Ella woke chilled, her body aching, her throat burned. A fever had taken hold. When she opened her eyes, Rowan was beside her. He had entered without knocking, carrying a steaming mug and a folded cloth. He pressed the cloth to her forehead, knelt beside the bed, and handed her the tea, herbal, bitter, perfect. "You should have said something," he murmured. Her voice cracked. "I did not want to trouble anyone." He looked at her, really looked. "You are not trouble," he said. The simplicity of it made her breath catch. He stayed that night, sitting in the chair beside her. Jonah slept soundly nearby. The firelight bathed the room in soft gold. They did not speak, but something passed between them, quiet, undeniable, a truth words could only ruin. In her fevered haze, Ella watched his silhouette and felt something stir in her chest, softly, painfully, unmistakably. She noticed how often his eyes found hers across the room, how he shifted slightly when she entered, how his hands, though scarred, moved with care around Jonah, how he never touched her, but always stood just close enough for her to feel him. She began to wonder if she was not just a guest, not just a burden, not someone being forgotten or replaced. Until the drawer. She had been looking for thread, just a needle and twine to mend Jonah's blanket. The drawer in Rowan's study was slightly ajar. She opened it. Inside was a letter. The paper was yellowed, sealed with red wax, addressed in elegant, looping script. "Rowan, I will wait for you in San Francisco. Love never ends. E." Ella froze. Her fingers trembled. Love never ends. Her heartbeat thundered in her ears. She closed the drawer slowly, then packed. She folded Jonah's things with care, tucked the blanket into her satchel, placed the carved horse on the hearth beside the fire. She left no note. Did not wake anyone. With Jonah in her arms, she stepped into the night, the wind biting her cheeks, and did not look back. Rain hammered the roof of the great house like 1,000 fists. Inside the study, shadows danced across maps, leather-bound books, and oil paintings of rivers and ranges Rowan Carter had once tamed. The hearth burned low, barely holding against the storm outside. Rowan sat in the high-backed chair near the window, a glass of untouched whiskey in his hand. In front of him, on the corner of the desk, sat a faded photograph in a silver frame, its edges dulled by time. A woman, smiling, hair pinned back, eyes full of belief. Olivia. He stared at her image in silence, the storm flickering across her glass-covered face. "I never thought I'd feel this again," he murmured, voice hoarse. "Not since you." He set the glass down, leaned forward, and whispered to the photograph. "For the first time in years, I wanted something real, and I pushed her away." He closed his eyes. The memories came like a flood. He had been a younger man, proud and dangerous, fighting for pay along the borderlands where land barons clashed with tribal nations. He was good with a rifle, better with silence. Then came Olivia, daughter of a Kansas preacher, stubborn as winter and kind as spring. She had kissed him behind the mission's chapel, told him if he lived through one last campaign, she would marry him under the cottonwoods. But he had enemies. One night, while Rowan was out chasing pay, the vengeance found her first. They burned the church, with her inside. He buried her in Kansas soil, and never spoke her name again until now. After that, he disappeared from the wars, bought land no one wanted, raised horses, not hell, built fences instead of breaking through them, and lived alone, punishing himself in silence. Until Ella May. Until the fire. A knock came at the door. One of the house staff stood soaked in the hall, rain dripping from his hat. "She's gone, sir." Rowan turned slowly. "Gone?" "She left in the night, with the boy." The man handed him a folded note, no more than a scrap. "I do not belong here." Rowan stood, fingers clenched. For years, nothing had touched him. Not time, not grief, not mercy. But now, he felt something tear open inside his chest, sharp, irregular. He moved fast, saddled his horse himself, packed only what he needed: a rope, flint, a lantern, and the letter she had found, the one never meant to be read. The rain came harder as he rode. He tracked wagon prints through the forest path, up into the mountains. The trees blurred with water. The wind howled through the rocks. But he did not stop. He knew where she had gone. The old burn site, a place scorched by the fire, where blackened trunks still stood like mourners. A place no one visited, but she would. Ella had once mentioned a pearl necklace, her late husband's gift to Jonah before the baby was born. She had lost it in the flight from the flames, and now she was trying to get it back. By the time Rowan reached the ridge, lightning split the sky. The trail below was slick with mud. Hoofprints mixed with boot marks veered sharply near the cliff edge. Then he saw her. Ella was below, clinging to a root, half submerged in a rushing gully. Water roared down the ravine, rising fast. Her eyes were wild with fear. "Jonah's safe," she screamed. "I left him in the wagon." Rowan did not wait. He tied a rope to his saddle horn, wrapped the other end around his waist, and plunged down the rocks. Rain blinded him. His boots slipped. The world tilted. But he reached her. "Take my hand," he shouted. She did. The current dragged at them both, but Rowan braced himself, gripping a jagged stone with one hand and pulling her up with the other, inch by inch. Her fingers dug into his arm, nails scraping skin, until at last he dragged her over the edge. They collapsed together on the bank. Ella coughed, shivering violently. Mud clung to her dress. Her hair stuck to her cheeks. She reached for him as if to say something, but no words came. Neither spoke. They just held each other in the rain, two people soaked to the soul. And for once, the silence between them was not empty. It was full. The letter arrived just after dusk. It was not addressed to Rowan. It was for Ella. She opened it with trembling hands, eyes darting across the jagged handwriting. "If Carter wants the boy back, he'll hand over the southern fields. We both know what he really cares about. Come alone or not at all. C.M." Ella's breath caught in her throat. Jonah. Gone. Taken. The last thing she remembered was stepping into the clinic in town, just to fetch cough syrup. A moment, a glance away. When she turned back, his blanket lay empty on the bench. She rode back to the ranch as fast as the horse would carry her. When Rowan read the note, he said nothing at first, just stood there, staring out the window toward the horizon where his land stretched endlessly. Finally, he spoke, calm as death. "Clay Mortensen." Ella froze. "You know him?" "He tried to undercut me on the rail line contracts. Lost. Blames me for his debts. But Jonah, he's using the boy to get my land. Then call the sheriff." Rowan turned to her slowly. His voice dropped. "Mortensen owns half the deputies in 3 counties. If we call them, Jonah will vanish." Ella's knees nearly gave out. "What are we supposed to do?" Rowan looked at her, long and steady. Then, for the first time, he took her hand. Rough fingers, steady grip. "I am going to get him back." He left the next morning before dawn. No farewell, no promises, just action. He packed only what mattered: his revolver, a hunting rifle, a folded map of the valley, and a small leather pouch from the drawer beside Olivia's photo. Inside was a weathered charm, half moon and eagle feathers. Olivia's. He tucked it into his shirt. Clay Mortenson's hideout was an abandoned ranch deep in the southern basin, cut off by bluffs and rarely visited. Rowan knew the terrain. He had scouted it once in another life. He camped a mile out, waited for nightfall. Then he set fire to a stack of brush south of the compound, thick smoke curling upward into the stars. As the hired guns scrambled toward the glow, Rowan circled wide, approaching from the west, using shadows and sagebrush for cover. He moved like a ghost. 2 guards stood near the barn. Rowan knocked one out cold with the butt of his rifle, shot the other clean through the thigh before the man could draw. Inside, the barn was dark. Rowan heard soft crying, small, muffled. Jonah. He found the boy tied in a horse stall, a dirty blanket thrown over him. Rowan knelt quickly, cutting the bindings. Jonah whimpered, but the moment he saw Rowan's face, he stilled. "Shh, I've got you," Rowan whispered, hoisting the child close. Then, shouts. Footsteps pounded outside. Rowan ducked low, moved fast, pressed against the barn wall. He fired once, through a crack in the wood, hitting a lantern and plunging the yard into smoke and darkness. The men cursed, firing wildly. Rowan bolted through the rear door. Jonah clutched tight. He weaved through brush, zigzagging, using every trick he had learned on the battlefield. But a shot rang out from behind. It struck. Pain bloomed in his shoulder. His knees buckled, but he never let go of the child. He rolled behind a fallen log, breathing hard, shielding Jonah with his body. The baby sobbed softly against his chest. Footsteps approached. Another shot cracked overhead. Then, out of the dark, a bell, a clang, then a roar. The blacksmith, old Jed, the town's retired forger, charged into the chaos with his wagon team and a lantern in each hand. Behind him came 2 of the ranch hands from Carter's spread, alerted by Ella, who had ridden out in desperation after Rowan left. The distraction worked. Mortenson's men scattered, caught off guard by the sudden force. Rowan was hauled up, bleeding, but conscious. They brought him back, under cover of night. Ella waited on the porch, lantern trembling in her grip. When she saw them, saw Jonah safe, and Rowan half-conscious, covered in mud and blood, she dropped to her knees, sobbing. They carried him inside, laid him on the bed. He drifted in and out of consciousness. Before he passed out entirely, Ella pressed a damp cloth to his brow and whispered, "You brought my son home." Rowan opened one eye, managed the faintest of smiles. "I told you," he murmured, fingers brushing against the charm still at his neck, blood staining the edges. "I do not let children die." The storm outside howled like a wounded beast, snow lashing the windowpanes with relentless force. But inside the small room at Carter Ranch, time stood still. Rowan lay unmoving, his face pale, his breathing shallow. The bullet had missed his heart, but not by much. Fever now gripped him, fierce and unrelenting. Ella had not left his side in 3 days. She refused food, refused rest. She sat quietly, holding his hand when the tremors came, wiping sweat from his brow when he murmured in delirium. Sometimes he called for Olivia. Once he whispered Jonah's name. But mostly he lay silent. Ella told stories to Jonah while cradling him with one arm, her other hand never far from Rowan's. Her voice cracked, but she smiled when the boy looked up. "Do you know what kind of man he is?" she whispered, brushing Jonah's hair. "The kind who walked through fire to save you. Twice. That night, certain she might lose him, she wrote him a letter, folded it, left it beside the bed. Rowan, I used to think I was broken, that love like this wasn't meant for people like me. But you made me believe again. Even if I lose you, I will carry this with me like flame. It will never go out. Ella. At dawn, on the fourth day, Rowan stirred. Ella snapped awake at the soft shift of breath. She leaned in, clutching his hand. His eyelids fluttered open. He looked at her, not with warmth, but something else. His gaze was distant, his expression guarded. "Rowan," she whispered, "you're awake." He blinked. "Jonah?" "He's safe," she replied quickly. "Perfect. Waiting for you." Rowan nodded weakly, then turned his head toward the window. Snow fell beyond the glass. Silence stretched between them. Ella brushed a lock of damp hair from his temple. "You scared me." "I did not mean to," he said. Then, after a pause, "You should go." Her chest tightened. "What?" His voice was hoarse. "You and the boy deserve better than this. Better than me. I am not whole. Rowan. I cannot give you a future, Ella. Only ghosts. Only regrets." He closed his eyes. "Leave before I am strong enough to stop you." She stared at him, stunned. By nightfall, she packed, not because she wanted to, but because he asked her to. Jonah slept peacefully as she strapped the bag. She looked back only once, at the man who had risked everything for her, now bathed in firelight and silence. Then, she stepped out into the wind. Snow blanketed the hills, cloaking the land in white stillness. Ella rode toward town, the storm biting at her cheeks. Rowan's words echoed in her mind. "You should go." But halfway down the trail, something inside her shattered. No man had ever fought for her like he had. No one had ever risked their life for her child. And no man, no matter how broken, deserved to be left alone after giving everything. She turned the horse around. Snow whipped across her face. Her cloak soaked through. Still, she rode, heart pounding, hooves lost in white. When she burst through the ranch door, she did not call for help. She moved through the hall like a storm herself, wet, breathless, trembling. Rowan's eyes opened as she entered. She dropped her bag, crossed the room, fell to her knees beside the bed, and wrapped her arms around him. He stared at her, stunned. "You came back," he whispered. "I never left," she said. She pulled back, enough to look him in the eye. "You do not get to choose for me. I choose." Her palm pressed against his chest, over his battered but beating heart. "And even if you think you are too broken to love," her voice cracked, "I am not too broken to stay. I do not want perfect, Rowan. I want real." A beat of silence. "I choose now. I choose you." The snow melted slowly that year, softening the frozen ground like forgiveness. Ella stayed, not because Rowan asked, but because he stopped pushing her away. In the quiet days that followed the storm, they found rhythm. He healed slowly. She helped rebuild what fire, bullets, and fear had tried to take. But it was what Rowan did in secret that changed everything. He met with a lawyer one morning, long before the sun rose. Documents were drawn up, signatures placed. By week's end, a portion of Carter Ranch, thousands of acres to the east, was legally hers. No ceremony, no announcement. He simply left the deed on the kitchen table, waited with a river stone, and a note written in his firm hand. "This land is yours now, to plant, to raise, or to walk away from. No strings, just choice." Ella stared at it for a long time, the paper trembling in her hands. It was not just land, it was freedom, it was trust, it was love, spoken in the only language Rowan knew. And then came the hearing. He told her it was for formality, but she found him that morning in front of the town courthouse, hair neatly combed, shirt pressed, waiting. Inside, in the quiet echo of wood-paneled walls, Rowan Carter stood before the judge and requested guardianship, not just of Jonah, but of Ella as well. To protect them, he said plainly, from anyone who might try what Clay did. The judge squinted. "You mean as family?" Rowan hesitated, then nodded once. "Yes. The court clerk gasped. Murmurs filled the room. The town mayor leaned in from the back bench, whispering, "That's the man who hasn't let anyone on his land in 10 years. But Rowan never flinched. He signed the paperwork like he was branding cattle, deliberate, final. When they exited the building, Ella was speechless. "You did not have to do this," she said softly. "I know," he replied. "Then why?" He looked at her, tired eyes, scar on his shoulder, wind in his hair. "Because I do not want you to ever feel like you're alone again." That night, they sat on the porch as Jonah played in the dirt with the wooden horse. Lantern light flickered against the walls. Rowan rose, walked into the house, and returned holding a small, velvet-wrapped box. He placed it in her lap. Ella opened it. Inside was a silver locket, dented slightly, its hinge worn smooth. She looked at him, confused. "It was hers," he said quietly. "Olivia's." Ella blinked. "Rowan, you do not have to. And, God heaven, Matt. Well, Maine. I know." He stepped closer. "But I think she would want you to have it." His voice broke, just slightly. "Because she was love once, but you are love again." Tears welled in Ella's eyes. She did not answer him with words, just took his hand, placed the locket gently over her heart, and let the silence speak for them both. That week, word spread across town like wildfire, not of land or court papers, but of a man once thought heartless, now known for the quiet, profound way he gave everything. Not with noise, but with presence. The spring after the fire came gentler than any before it. Where ash once lay thick on the soil, green sprouted defiantly, wildflowers stretched toward the Wyoming sky, and horses ran freely across open fields that now held something more than just grass. They held purpose. Rowan and Ella had turned part of Carter Ranch into something new, something healing, a sanctuary. They called it Ember Creek, a rescue for broken horses, maimed by work, fear, or abandonment, animals that no one else wanted, horses too wild to tame, too damaged to sell. But here, they were cared for, respected, and allowed to run. "Like us," Ella would say, brushing the mane of a one-eyed Mustang. They just needed someone to believe they were worth saving. Jonah learned to walk between the corral posts, chasing chickens and tumbling through hay. Rowan built him a saddle small enough for his first ride, carved by hand. Neighbors who once whispered about the reclusive Carter now waved at the ranch gate. Children brought sugar cubes for the horses, women brought pies, men brought fence wire and stayed for supper. Rowan, the man who had once belonged to no one, was now a father, not just to Jonah, but to every soul who stepped onto that land looking for safety. Ella kept a journal. On quiet nights, she wrote by lamplight, recounting the moments that led them here. The fire, the forest, the letter she almost never sent. One entry read, "It began with a blaze, a cruel, unstoppable force meant to destroy. But sometimes fire does not end things. Sometimes it clears space for something new." They married the following autumn. It was not grand, just a gathering in the field behind the barn, as the sun set gold over the prairie. Ella wore a dress she stitched herself, with lace borrowed from the blacksmith's wife. Jonah scattered dried petals ahead of her steps. Rowan waited beneath a cottonwood tree, clean-shaven, nervous in his best vest, holding a single blue cornflower. The town preacher read simple vows. When asked if he took Ella May, Rowan said, "I already have." Laughter rolled through the crowd like wind through wheat. But Ella only smiled and kissed him before the preacher could finish. No one minded. As the stars came out and the fiddles played, Rowan pulled her close beneath the twinkling string lights and whispered, "You're the only fire I will ever walk into again." They danced barefoot in the dust, under a sky so wide it could hold 1,000 new beginnings. And as the guests departed, Ella stood at the fence line, watching Jonah chase fireflies with Rowan not far behind. She picked up her journal one last time. Her voice was quiet, but certain. I once thought I would die in smoke, that the fire would swallow me, and that would be the end. She looked out across the land, the horses, the home, the man who had once ridden through hell for her. But then, the light came. Not from the sky, not from the sun. She turned to watch Rowan lift Jonah high into the air, laughter ringing through the night. It came on the back of a black horse, in the shape of a man who had forgotten how to feel, but never forgot how to protect. Her final words were barely louder than the wind. And he loved us back to life. If this story stirred something in your heart, if it made you believe that even in the wildest, darkest places, love can still rise from ash, then this is just the beginning. Here on Wild West Love Stories, we bring you tales of forbidden romance, untamed devotion, and second chances forged in fire. So don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe, and ring the bell to never miss a story where bullets miss, but hearts never do. Thanks for riding with us. We'll see you on the next trail.